Michael Golic Jr. with us for a couple of minutes. DraftKings is where he is now. You can find his content there. He is on their platforms. All right, what was your big takeaway from the weekend?
Man, the first round can look awfully coherent when we're not concerned with overreaching on quarterbacks. We were, as a public, as, draft prognosticators, however you want to put it, all pretty off in our evaluation of that class. And so I think what it allowed in the draft cycle was for us to learn a lot more about the position players in the draft, some of the offensive and defensive linemen. I think between that and what it allowed, and then it was cool to watch other positions where the rest of football gets made have their day in the sun when you only had Kenny Pickett going 20th overall in the first round as the first round quarterback to the Steelers.
Yeah, Mike, I think going from one door just 10 feet to the left is the coolest part of the Kenny Pickett story, one. And then, you look at what the Cardinals did. They've had such little success with drafting players. So trading for Hollywood Brown out here in Arizona, I'm actually good with it. What about you?
Yeah, I think, listen, right now we know so much in Arizona is dictated by the organization's relationship with Kyler Murray and kind of making sure he's in a good space heading into this season, because we know we've seen a lot of great performance from him. The Cardinals sputtering down the stretch of the last couple of seasons. Cliff Kingsbury kind of getting called to the mat for that as of late. And so you get a guy in Hollywood Brown that he knows from his days at Oklahoma, a guy who I think started to put behind some of those drops that we saw early in last season that have been a part of his story. And I think for a lot of places, especially, for Arizona in a division like the NFC West, that, yeah, you've got the defending Super Bowl champs in there, but everyone else right now maybe going through a bit of a transition. Are the Niners going to finally go to Trey Lance this year? The Seahawks moving on from Russell Wilson. Maybe they feel like adding a veteran, going to something in that spot, especially on offense, where they need to see that uptick through the entirety of the season. Maybe this is the way they go about addressing it with a veteran.
Let me switch gears with you over to the college side. What are you making out of NIL? And I bring it to the Arizona State side. They've lost over a dozen players out here. Guys are just like, I'm not playing for Herm. I'm not playing for ASU. If you had NIL and transfer portal back in your day at Notre Dame, would you have stuck it out? Would you have gotten a check?
I hope I would have gotten some checks in some form, right? Now, I think I've heard a lot of people talk about this, the different forms of NIL that we're seeing right now. There's certainly what's shown up in the form of collectives who have used that as part of the thing that people see as enticement bordering on pay for play. And then you've got, players securing marketing deals, stuff like that. And so I think it's a great thing in general. I've really enjoyed seeing players finally be able to get a piece of the pie in all this. Right. I understand the crowd out there at ASU might not be feeling the same way right now, but I think all of this is going to force every part of college football to be better. But I'll speak in general for college football. It is going to force coaches, teams, organizations, whatever you want to call them, to make sure that the promises they make in recruiting are promises kept once players get on campus, right? Too often we've seen that not be the case. And so now players have recourse. They've got the agency and the ability to go out there and test the transfer portal, to test that NIL market, all of these things that give them the increased mobility that they've watched their coaches have for years. Ultimately, I think we're going to settle and get used to this the way we do with everything else. It's kind of like an iPhone update. Feels bad at first, and then you just wonder how life was ever like it without it before. And then everyone will move on. But I like the place that it's coming from, because we were long overdue for players to start getting in a little more of the action and to start having a little bit more say in what their 4 years of eligibility look like. A coach can coach for as long as the market dictates that he is capable of doing so. Players got 4 years to either make as much money as they can now in college or create enough value for themselves to be ready for the NFL after that 4-year eligibility window's up.